Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hi there, my friends, and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth with Peter Robbins. And a special guest tonight. Very special. As you know, Meanwhile Here on Earth is broadcast on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. You are watching or listening, very likely, on KGRADB.com. Remember that if you subscribe to KGRA, you not only get every one of the 60-odd shows I have done so far, but the countless shows in the network's archive. And if you use my name, Peter, P-E-T-E-R, when you subscribe, you get a 30% discount. Also, once the show is archived, you can find it online here on KGRA or at Spreaker.com, audio only. No monologue tonight, in part because this guest has more than earned the lengthy and rather mind-blowing introduction I'm about to give him. Gus Russo and I met 30 years ago when I was doing research on the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident and needed a place to stay in the Washington area, and we have been friends since then. Gus Russo is a veteran investigative reporter, author, documentary producer, and musician. His first book, Live by the Sword, The Secret War Against Castro and the Death of JFK, was praised by the New York Times as, quote, compelling, exhaustively researched, and evenly handled. Kirkus Reviews called Sword probably the last book on the Kennedy assassination you will need to read, gripping and convincing. The book was a Book of the Month Club and History Book Club featured alternative. Sword was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 1999 and was optioned for a miniseries before publication by Showtime Networks. Russo's next authored The Outfit, The Role of Chicago's Underworld in the Shaping of Modern America. It was described by the Baltimore Sun as seamless, a tireless read, a saga, 550 pages of good journalism. That's the Chicago Tribune. And one of the essential works on the subject of organized crime. Los Angeles Times. The Outfit was also nominated for the Pulitzer Prize and was optioned before publication by USA Network. Russo's next book, Gangsters and Goodfellas, was a collaboration with, get this, former New York gangster Henry Hill, a sequel to his smash international 1985 best-selling biography, Wise Guy, which was the basis for the hit film Goodfellas, starring Robert De Niro and Ray Liotta. Russo followed with Supermob, how Sidney Korshak and his criminal associates became America's hidden power brokers. Supermob film rights were sold before publication to CBS Paramount. Regarding this book, Publishers Weekly stated, Russo's extensive research is amply evident, and he has made use of recently disclosed records to paint a fuller picture than predecessors such as Seymour Hersh and Brian Ross were able to. A worthy addition to the genre. Chicago Sun-Times, Russo does a masterful job. The amount of research in the book is staggering. Russo pulls plenty of substantive dirty deeds done by Korshak into the light. Korshak would have cringed. Love that quote. In January of 2006, Russo and his co-writer delivered a breakthrough 90-minute documentary for German public TV network WDR. The film Rendezvous with Death clarifies the relationship between Cuba's intelligence services and JFK's killer. At this writing, the film has aired in 15 countries. In addition, Russo's fifth book, with Steve Moulton, was Brothers in Arms, The Kennedys, the Castros, and the Politics of Murder. Brothers in Arms was named winner of the 2008 History Prize by the New York Book Festival. In 2009, Russo produced and co-wrote Generation 9/11, a documentary feature film on religious intolerance for Academy Award-winning director Nigel Noble. Russo released his sixth book, a memoir entitled Boomer Days, in 2011, and in 2013 co-produced a 2-hour television special to commemorate the 50th anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination, hosted by Tom Brokaw for NBC News, as well as writing and editing the companion book, Where Were You? In 2005, Russo was among the voiceover narrators in Academy Award winner Alex Gibley's Holmes HBO special, Sinatra, All or Nothing at All, an amazing documentary on this complex and brilliant singer. In 2017, Russo was inducted into the Advisory Council of the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement, better known as the Mob Museum, in Las Vegas. His next book, Best of Enemies, with Eric Denzahal, hailed by the New York Times as fast-paced and lively. Kirkus called it a rollicking tale of Cold War espionage, and Library Journal called it an engrossing tale, highly recommended. The book was optioned for a feature film before publication by a partnership of Robert De Niro and Tribeca Films and Ron Howard and Imagine Entertainment. Gus also completed a feature play about the legendary guitarist Django Reinhardt's life during the occupation of Paris, called The World on a String, and a fictional novella, Gaia 2021, about a Robin Hood-type hacker, environmental activist inspired by real events. Russo has worked as an investigative reporter for PBS's Frontline series, as well as 2 ABC News special reports with Peter Jennings, Dangerous World, the Kennedy years, 1997, and Dan Rather's CBS Reports. Russo served as senior editorial producer for Peter Jennings' November 2003 two-hour documentary on the assassination of President Kennedy called Beyond Conspiracy, and previously Jack Anderson specials. At Frontline, Russo was the co-lead reporter on a massive 2-year investigation that led to the landmark 4-hour production, Who Was Lee Harvey Oswald? For that project alone, Russo traveled to the 3 countries, interviewed over 300 primary witnesses. Russo was also been a consultant for programs such as 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes 2, Eye to Eye with Connie Chung, as well as documentary productions based in England, France, Germany, Japan, and Mexico. Russo has appeared on countless radio and TV programs, including NBC Nightly News, NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, a personal favorite, and the History Channel, numerous shows. A&E's Biography, specifically about Jack Ruby, Hardball with Chris Matthews, and Dan Rather's 1993 special, Who Killed JFK? Russo has researched for numerous writers, including Sidney Hirsch, Gerald Posner, and Anthony Summers, and has written for the Baltimore Sun, Variety, Baltimore Magazine, The Nation, The Washington Post, Book Forum, Spy Talk, Daily Beast, American Heritage, The Huffington Post, and Mother Jones. In another life, actually earlier in this life, Russo was and is a professional musician, composer, band leader, and private instructor. In that incarnation, he played with or in tandem with many well-known acts, including John Phillips, the New Mamas and Papas, Phoebe Snow, Michael Murphy, The Byrds, Livingston Taylor, Poco, Mary Travers of Peter, Paul and Mary, and Commander Cody. Russo, the musician, also wrote commercial jingles and low-budget film scores for such amazing films as Basket Case and Brain Damage. As an actor, Russo appeared in the opening night stage adaptation of Tommy Wiseau's The Room at Washington's AFI Theater, and was leader of the 6-piece group String Theory, which emulated swing bands that took Europe by storm in the early 20th century and mixed in the best of the American swing band combos. With acoustic jazz guitars, violin, upright bass, pedal steel guitar, and vocals, string theory took on Django Reinhardt, Nat King Cole, Benny Goodman, Hoagie Carmichael, Dan Hicks, and other greats. This is an abbreviated introduction because we actually want to have some time with Gus on the show. Gus Russo, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
It is to hear somebody talk about read your biography like that.
I know.
Any idea you wrote it, I wouldn't have sent it to you.
I mean, you and I know I made it up, but it sounds really good. Gus,
oh my God.
Before we go on, you have been involved in telling some of the darkest stories of the century. And although you've been kind enough to supply some photographs of yourself, you are more comfortable doing this interview audio only and future interviews when you'll be returning to the show. Would you tell our listeners and viewers a bit why you choose to do that?
Well, let's see. I think people are generally more relaxed if they're not worrying about the lighting and if their shirt has a stain on it. It's too distracting. Also, I'm terrified of the interweb and how you can put a 2-hour video up there that will be up there forever. And I just feel like I grew up as you did in the olden days with late night talk radio, which is, in some ways it's more intimate by having this kind of conversation. And I just know that once you get something up on the web, it never goes away. So, and as I told you before, I think of J.D. Salinger as my hero.
Yes, certainly
one of my favorite things.
As charmingly a reclusive American author as we have ever had in modern times. Kind of like a mob boss himself, take the camera, smash it, destroy the film.
And by the way, Peter, I have to say, I have never done this before. It's very tricky and difficult to talk about yourself, especially for me. I'd rather talk about my work, but you're an old friend, and this will be probably the only time I will do something like this. But you asked, and so I'm here. But it's not something I normally do, and let's see if I can get through it psychically. You're talking about my
number
life.
One. I have wanted you on this show since before I had a show, and just remembering when we first met through a friend, and I stayed at your apartment, and I remember walking in and being a reading snob. Of course, you're going to make judgments about people by their bookshelves. I walked in and I looked at your bookshelf in Baltimore and I thought, holy shit, this guy has more books on the JFK assassination than I have on UFOs. And so began our friendship. I also appreciate why you're less than comfortable, talking about yourself rather than your work. And you have an extraordinary body of work. But again, I consider it a favor and a kindness to share some of what you're going to do tonight with my listeners and viewers. And I thought, you think you know somebody to some degree from exchanging stories over the years. And then last year, I finally read your memoir, Boomer Days, which in terms of American memoirs by anybody of our generation, I'll say it's my favorite.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, and thank you. And I'm not just being gratuitous here. We grew up in contemporary times. We shared a lot of the same memories from different points of view. Worked in peripherally some of the same worlds, had some of the same thoughts. And I want to understand a little bit more about how you became the person that you became. It's a focus of this show. There's so many public people that we say or we think we know, but of course we don't know them. We know the public self that's projected and what we dig up. or hear in various sources, often incorrectly. And because it's such a perfect way to start our time together on the air, I've asked you to do me the favor of reading the opening first page and a half of
Ooh.
Boomer Days. And thank you again in advance for doing so.
Okay, up to 2 floors up. Is that the words we're going to end?
To, let's see. Chapter 1, page 2, right through to some even believed he was behind the JFK hit in Dallas.
Oh, okay, wow. All right, well, settle in, folks. Oh, wow. Oh, by the way, can I just say something before I read, Peter?
Of course.
I encourage everybody to do this exercise, to write a memoir if they have. You can find time. Don't say you don't have time. Just write for an hour in the morning for a year. But because it forces you to answer the question you asked. I'd never thought about how I became whatever I became.
Yes.
But when you start as an adult, as an older adult, revisiting your life, you think about all that stuff completely differently.
Yes.
And so it does help you realize how you became what you became, whatever that is. And it's a great exercise, to revisit in great detail all the things you think you knew with a different perspective.
And let me just add that none of us are writers before we're writers. So if you've never written,
that's right.
I think some of you know that my dad, who lived to be 98 years and 7 months, compos mentis up until the week he died, wrote a memoir that he started at 95, worked on for 2 years, finished, published, got out there. And if you want to learn about my dad, it's called An Ordinary Man by Allan, Allan Robbins. With that understood, Gus Russo, the beginning of Boomer Days.
All right, 2 pages. Chapter 1.
2/3.
Chapter 1, which is called Happy Days. The epigram under the heading is, "It was the best of times, period." Everyone knows the feeling. It's 4 a.m., you're dead asleep, way past REM, and cherishing the most lucid dream imaginable. You know the type, the one with the so vivid that it flirts impossibly close with reality. That's where I was one morning in October 1992. And although I can only guess, it's a good chance that I was having my reoccurring dream of being Elvis Presley, strumming and singing out in front of my grass shack on the beach at Hanauma Bay, while an enthralled gaggle of Hawaiian beauties gushed. Parentheses, it was a dream I had actually lived, sort of, for a few years in the 80s, but more about that later. Perhaps I was focusing in on one particular tanned wahine who was approaching me with a plumeria-scented lei when it happened. And then in bold letters, it says, "Ring," real loud exclamation points. The phone was ringing. I jumped up to the stark and sad realization that I was not in Honolulu, but in fact in the dark basement of my mother's home in Maryland, where I was temporarily crashing while looking for an apartment and conducting almost nonstop investigative research trips for my new network gig. I had just relocated after 16 years playing music in upstate New York and Hawaii. I answered the blaring real-life phone lying next to the floor beside my real-life cot as I kicked the imaginary sand from my feet. "Yeah? Gus, is that you?" "Yeah, it's Oliver." That cleared up the mystery since I only knew one Oliver, and that realization sank in. And as that realization sank in, my mother pounded on the door to the basement. She was also aroused from deep sleep by the phone call from someone she was certain was a dying relative. My mother is a hard-loving Italian woman who, because of some childhood trauma unknown to me, lives in a constant state of worry. No exaggeration. Some see the glass half full, others half empty. My mom only worries about who will spill it onto the carpet. "Gus, what's wrong? Is somebody hurt?" she cried from the top of the stairs. No, Mom, it's just Oliver Stone. Oh, okay, she said as she trundled back up to her bedroom 2 floors up. Now, one might think that an unworldly, widowed 66-year-old would be just a tad startled to learn that a multiple Academy Award-winning director was calling her son at 4 a.m. But during the time that I crashed at her home, she had actually gotten used to taking messages from my eclectic and usually eccentric coterie. Quote, someone named Rachel Porter called. Who's she? Parentheses, it's Lee Harvey Oswald's daughter. Quote, you have a message here from Vetus. That would be tennis whiz and dear friend Vetus Garolitis. Who is this Madeline Brown who called today? That was LBJ's mistress. Someone called from Washington, said you wrote him a letter. His name is Ted. I hope I spelled this right. Shack, Shackley. Who's he? Ted Shackley. Just a guy I went to high school with, Mom. Okay, so I lied. But there was no reason to worry her any more than normal by telling her that Ted Shackley was the senior CIA and executive most feared by the left, viewed as the devil incarnate, and the man who oversaw Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, a pacification program that generated thousands of assassinations. Some even believe he was behind the JFK hit in Dallas.
Okay.
Mother.
I think we can call it a show, really. That was just great.
Well, that's sort of a grabber to get you to want to read the book, you know?
Yeah. Well, all I can say again, and I am an unabashed fan as well as a friend.
Likewise.
The book is, I read a good part of it like this, with my jaw askew. Again, I know you well enough to know you spin nothing. If it's not interesting, you move on. But if it's somewhat interesting, you relate it. And let's go back to the beginning, at least briefly, Gus.
Mm-hmm.
You were born in Maryland?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about your parents beyond what we've just learned about your mom?
Well, my mother, who is deceased now, but when I wrote that, of course, she wasn't. My parents were second generation Italians. Their parents had all come over, I guess, around the turn of the century, and they were very poor. My parents, we had nothing, and my father, he must have lived paycheck to paycheck or week to week, whatever. And my mother was a housekeeper, raised 3 sons, but they were great parents, loving parents, did the best they could. And they were so poor. They coming up during the Depression, my mother used to tell me stories that were just horrific. Both she and my father had to drop out of school. My father dropped out in his sophomore year of high school. My mother dropped out in grade school.
Gosh.
Because they had to work. They were that poor. And so I would ultimately become the first, not only in my family, to graduate from college, but from high school. I mean, think about that. That's crazy. In this day and age, it doesn't even occur to people. But that's how bad the Depression was. And, I think part of what made me become sort of full of wanderlust and crazy is I didn't want to be that. I saw how brutal, their lives were in so many ways. They never went anywhere. They couldn't afford to go anywhere. Yeah. And I just said, I'm going to not do that, whatever it takes. Even if I don't have money, I'm going to figure out a way to have adventure. And for better or worse, I think I did pull that off. But I think it was, I didn't really consciously think that at the time. But looking back, that really was a big motivation. My father, there was so much he wanted to do and didn't get to do. And my mother the same way. Yeah. It was a very, very tough time. I didn't want to die a bitter person who didn't try everything, because I had seen, what it did to people. And so that's, I think, what really. And then, of course, the other thing was when I was just out of my toddler years, I saw Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show. That would do it. And a million other young boys thought the same thing. You got John Lennon talked about it, and Bruce Springsteen and everybody else. Yeah. that's what I want to do. So my parents for 2 years to get me a cheap guitar. They finally got one. I think it was a $13 guitar, but they made a big deal. You better take care of this. This costs us a lot of money. That's how poor we were. And I played until my hands bled practically. I just was obsessed. And like most of the toddlers who saw Elvis, it didn't take long to realize we couldn't be Elvis because we couldn't be Elvis. So it was like, now what do I do? So then it became folk music, which was more accessible. I saw the Kingston Trio, and I said, that's something I might be able to pull off. But I couldn't be Elvis.
Now, you went to parochial school?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Starting in the first grade and up through high school.
8 years of parochial school and 4 years of Catholic boys' high school. So that took some undoing, I'll tell you.
Wow. Boy, oh boy, if the nuns only knew.
Oh, goodness. The weird thing is, going to high school in a parochial private high school like that, it turned more young boys off to Catholicism than encouraged, because we were all forced to read the Bible in our theology class, and we were reading page after page, and especially in the Old Testament, we're going, this is crazy. I never would have read it if they hadn't made me. And I think half my class became atheists by the time they graduated.
I always felt that my Catholic friends made the best rebels because they had so much to rebel against. Reform Judaism, not so much. At a certain point, when we were kids, we became aware of the world of politics, and you grew up fairly close to Washington, D.C. Can you share what were some early memories that we categorize as political memories for you as a boy in parochial school?
Well, let's see. I didn't think about it when I was in grade school so much, but I really became aware when JFK was elected because Italian Catholics, just really identified with the first Catholic president thing. He was such a hero to not only the Irish, but to the Italians. Yeah. And I know in our basement, the only framed photo we had was a good sized photo of Jack and Jackie. It was a big deal. He was such a charismatic. You think about it, in the 50s, everything was in black and white.
That's it.
And matronly and so forth. Like you had Mamie Eisenhower and Dwight Eisenhower. They were very average looking people in black and white on your black and white TV. Then in the 60s, color TV happens at the same time that these two movie stars become president and first lady.
Interesting.
You went to another universe. Yeah. It's hard to imagine the change in the zeitgeist if you weren't there. It's hard to picture how incredible it was that these people who look like Brad and Angelina just, succeeded.
I hear you.
Amy.
I had much the same experience remembering vaguely President and Mrs. Eisenhower, reminding me a little bit in Eisenhower's case of my grandfather, because he was bald, he had a nice smile, and, well, even better, he was a general in the war, and what could be better for a post-war kid than, a general? And then the Kennedys come in, and that idea that he was like a little older than my dad, he was a World War II hero, that, to be blunt about it, although I'm sure the Eisenhowers, I hope they had a wonderful sex life, but my sense was sex was something I was really looking forward to having, and I was pretty sure these two were having it.
Oh,
and I like that. That inspired me a bit.
Well, also he was hip. JFK he read James Bond novels.
Yes.
And he hung out with the Rat Pack. Exactly. I mean, this was just crazy. The only person I don't think they hung out with was Elvis. That would have been like, insane. But so you went from, the 50s into the 60s with such a quantum leap that then all of a sudden you started thinking, you noticed politics as a young person. You said, boy, what is this political thing? And then when the missile crisis happened was probably the first big imprint on me of politics,
Yes.
And how it almost blew up. And that's another thing that's
Me too.
hard for people today who didn't live through it to appreciate. I think there were 26,000 nukes at that point before they had their arms reduction, and pointed at us. And it was like, we spent that much of that week living in the basement. We really thought we were close to Washington, D.C.
Yes, very.
So, we just thought it was terrifying, and it's hard to explain that to people who didn't go through it. But it was. So now all of a sudden, you're interested in the political situation, and then JFK gets killed.
Yes. And let's go back to November 22nd, 1963, a day that for all of us that lived through it was life-changing. What do you remember about that day, Gus? Because it impacted on your life, looking back on it, certainly more than it did other people's lives.
Yeah, part of it certainly was that our family's connection to the Catholic thing with the Kennedys. They were like gods in our house. So for people like us, it was a big, big, big deal. And as to why I became interested beyond that, I have to think about for a second. But suffice it to say, I remember exactly where I was. I can pretty much picture it. I was in the hallway of my freshman class, between 7th and 8th period. And, there was rumors in the hall. Did you hear that? Kennedy's been shot. A communist shot the president, and we thought he was in Russia or something. They said, no, he's not in Russia. How could a communist shoot the president? And all these rumors were flying in. We went into our next class, and the teacher said, we're not going to have class today, and the president has been shot. And then it came over the loudspeaker from the principal to all the classmates saying, and because we're a Catholic school,
oh my gosh,
we worship JFK. And so then we all started praying the rosary. And this was a room full of boys. It was an all-male Catholic high school.
Yeah.
And we all put our heads down on our desks and started doing the rosary in 8th period, I guess it was. Yeah. And it was just such a traumatizing event for a Catholic young boys to live through. And I saw and we went to homeroom, we got the word that over the PA that Kennedy had died. And I saw the most macho football players in my class crying. And I said, oh my God, Dave is crying, And I'm looking around, all these guys that were just broken up. So it was quite a moment. Now, I want to flash forward.
Please.
Just to make a connection to that. Decades later, after I had written some books and done some things, my alma mater, that high school, asked me to come back and speak to the class, and it was great. So I went back, and there was a couple hundred students there, and I talked about my work on the Kennedy case. And this is the eerie thing. Hold on to your seat for this one if you don't remember this from the book. So after it was over, this was an evening event. We walked out on the portico outside of this large cafeteria.
Hold it one moment, Gus. We're getting some distortion.
On my end.
Chanel, can you adjust that? Continue on, Gus.
Yes. Is that better?
Just fine.
So here I am decades later making this presentation at that same school.
Yeah.
And we go out onto the portico or whatever it is outside the cafeteria, and I'm talking to some of the students. And then one of them comes up to me and says, did you hear what happened? What just happened? I said, no, I've been speaking. He said, Jackie Kennedy just died. And this is no lie, I was 30 feet from where I heard that JFK had died. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm never coming back to this school again. I don't want to kill anybody else.
Sometimes the only retreat is dark humor, and very dark humor at that. I advise you to keep away from the school too, please, for all of our sakes.
I mean, talk about the hairs going up. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So anyway, that's my flash forward, how weird that is. But then the Kennedy thing happened, and I became very interested in, obviously what happened, who done it. and the reports were so contradictory.
Yeah.
I guess I may have been born with an analytical mind that couldn't.
I think so.
Sleep. I would say, "How can you sleep?" Because the one cop said it was a Mannlicher Carcano, and the other guy said it was a Mauser. Dad, how can you sleep? One guy said he was shot from the front, and one guy said he was shot from the back. And to me, I couldn't wrestle with it. I couldn't relax until I knew what was correct. And obviously, this didn't bother everybody, but those kind of inconsistencies really started to bother me, and that set me on the long trail of trying to figure out what happened.
Gus, for many of us young people, the couple of months after John Kennedy was murdered were particularly elegiac, dark, incredibly depressed. And I remember for myself, maybe 3 months later, growing up on Long Island, about 30 miles east of Manhattan, lying in bed one night in my usual routine of covers pulled up, reading a comic book, transistor radio on, earpiece in, flashlight on, feeling I'm getting away with some kind of murder, and my parents are completely oblivious to this routine. Right, yell. And Murray the K, a legendary disc jockey, said he basically played a song from a group in England. And I remember just stop reading the comic book and really listening. It was the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, I'm not going to exaggerate, just like a surge of electricity and something really positive and something that for the first time took me out of the sadness that I had been feeling. And it was a sea change for me. All of a sudden, there was something positive and fun and melodic and, exciting and new to focus on. Do you remember anything like that for you?
Oh, of course. And people have written about it, that we were in such deep mourning in this country after JFK,
Yes.
That the Beatles, when they came over to Ed Sullivan in February, and when that song came out a month or so beforehand, their timing couldn't have been better. And the Beatles know it. Paul McCartney has talked about it.
Gosh.
That America was ready for this. We were primed. We wanted to get out of this grief, and there they were, all smiling and having a good old time, jumping around the Ed Sullivan Show, singing, fun music, and everybody was just. It was like you just had this clearing out of your psyche, and all I can say is the timing was perfect. We were ready. Another good band could have been on Ed Sullivan that night, and it would have been great for them. But it was the Beatles, and they turned out to have a lot more talent than the average.
And did you have your guitar by this time?
Oh yeah, but I get this. I got my guitar in 1959, 58 or 59. My parents got me a guitar, and I immediately started to play folk music, like the Kingston Trio, because they were America's acoustic Beatles before there were Beatles. These guys did college concerts. They were humorous. They were very much the first Beatles. And I had put a little folk group together. And in grade school, at the CYO talent show, me and my friends won the talent show playing Kingston Trio songs. So I was primed, and I was already a player by that point. I'd already played things as a 13-year-old. I played for money, so I was semi-professional. I did a few jobs and had a little rock band because just before the Beatles, I had discovered the Beach Boys, and I wanted to be the first surfing band in Baltimore. Which, not only stupid from the obvious, but you can't dance to, or some of the songs we were trying to do, and so we didn't get a lot of work. But again, I was obsessed with that music.
Yeah.
So then the Beatles came in, and we did Beatle tunes. I was working a lot in the 60s as a teenager. I bought my first car with money I earned playing music.
What a thrill that must have been, especially coming from the situation that you were.
Oh, it was wonderful. And again, I was lucky we were all lucky
Yeah.
in that period of time
We
because
were.
as a 14, 15, 16-year-old who wanted to learn to play in Baltimore at the time, every Friday night, I looked this research up for my Boomer Days book. There were hundreds of CYO dances in the city. At every parish, there was a dance on Friday night. And at every public school on Saturday night, there was the teen center. So
Gosh.
between the two, you had about 700 places for teen bands to play.
How wonderful.
And we don't have it anymore. That's how we learned. So I was already working by the time I was 14, 15 years old. And because they would take almost anybody. They needed 400 or 500, 600. So anybody could get a gig. But that's how we learned. And I feel bad for young people today. They don't have that. And
it's so hard to explain. In the pre-digital days, not only were we not deprived, but we were capable. It was such a simpler time. Parents weren't fussed if you disappeared for the day. They weren't worried about you, being kidnapped or shot in a school shooting or something. And that excitement of things being so new, of hearing these songs as they were coming out, and of course it all exploded a little later in the 60s. It's very difficult to explain to people sometimes what it was like hearing these new songs by these extraordinary groups for the first time and realizing you were in the middle of it. And the history of popular culture was changing around you. You could literally feel the wind of history in your face.
Yeah.
I want to go back a few years because when you were a bit younger, you had a sighting of something we've come to call UFOs. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. The weirdest thing about it was broad daylight. And you don't hear a lot, of these crystal clear sightings. I was out in my backyard. I was a young teenager, maybe 13 or 14. It's in the book. I can't remember exactly. But I went out in the backyard. Maybe it was 3 PM, a clear sunny day. And we had a stand of trees, maybe 400 yards or a couple hundred yards away, very tall trees. And I happened to look up and I saw just a classic shape. It wasn't like a blurry thing. It was crystal clear, the classic saucer look. And I stared at it for a while. I said, what the heck? And I didn't have any particular obsession or interest in them at the time. I had seen the sci-fi movies and stuff, but I didn't think I was, that much that I would hallucinate. So I went next door and knocked on my neighbor's door, a married woman, probably in her 30s or 40s at the time. And I said, Miss Marion, would you look up there? Do you see what I see? And thank God she saw it because she said, she said the same thing. What is that? So I knew I wasn't crazy. I didn't have a camera. In those days, not everybody had a camera. So it's just in my memory. I wish I had. And then it hovered, I don't know, a couple of minutes and then just streaked off. And just disappeared. And we looked at each other. And the weirdest thing is when I moved away after high school and I would come back to the neighborhood, I would always go knock on Miss Marion's door, our next door neighbor. And she would say the same thing. She'd say, Gus, did we both see that thing we thought we saw years ago? I said, yeah, I think we did.
Wow.
It was our common link that we saw this. I didn't know what it was. I thought, could it be an alien spaceship? Could it be an experimental Air Force thing?
Exactly. Sure.
Never saw it again or anything like it. I don't think. No, that was the big one.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You get into high school and you know that you've got skills, dreams, interests. Did you begin to think about how you were going to become whatever it was that you were going to be as an adult, or did you just think that you were going to, make a career in music, or were already stirrings happening about writing, investigating, and doing things that you become so well known for?
Well, writing came much later. I was doing the investigating things back then, calling people up about the Kennedy story. I was just kind of crazy. I would call people up. Yeah, it's a 15-year-old kid. How, you don't know me?
Wow.
But are you the FBI guy? And that was a hobby / obsession.
Yeah.
But my real vocation, I always perceived, was going to be music. And I was playing regularly all during the 60s, never stopped. I was going to go to college because that was the thing to do. And I did go to college and majored in political science because my college I went to didn't have a music major.
Interesting.
And I took a lot of music courses. And I didn't tell my parents this, but I had every intention the day after graduation of forming a band.
Right.
I wasn't going to be a politician. I was curious about politics because of Kennedy. I just did it for the intellectual pursuit. I never thought I would make any kind of a career in that world. So
once again, I'm going to ask you to hold Gus for a moment while we have a little distortion and continue on.
Okay. Is that on?
Nope, we still got it. Chanel, can you do your magic and turn a knob or push a button? And continue on, Gus Russo.
Okay, is that any better?
Just fine. Just fine.
Where was I? So yeah, the plan, the secret plan, was to become a musician all along. In fact, during my high school years, I was so anxious to be a musician. I literally ran away from home in the summer. When I was like 13, I
remember in the book. Yeah,
I went up to the Poconos because I had read at the library where I hung out. I loved our library.
Yeah,
read about these resorts that hired young musicians for the summer, and my parents wouldn't let me go. And I said, okay. So one day I just went. I got on a bus. I feel bad for them now, but I was just so obsessed with becoming a musician. And then I would spend summers up in the resort areas.
Yeah, you got jobs. You were working.
Yeah, and I was learning from other musicians because a lot of these resorts brought in really good players from all styles. Yeah. And I ended up spending a lot of time in Lake George, New York. I would, after the first summer, my parents just gave in and let me do it every summer. So even while I was in college, as soon as June came along, I was heading up. By that time I had a car. I was driving up to Lake George and working at a resort all summer playing music. Yeah. And I was meeting such a great variety of different skills, musical skills, Broadway and jazz and pop and rock and folk. And I was absorbing all of it. So it really was great for me. And again, young people have no way of doing that today. Those resorts were all over New York State. Yeah. And
where you ultimately settled, Ithaca, New York, very close to where I live right now, which still, again, pandemic has made its mark, but every major music group, institution, soloist comes through here. Oh, Ithaca plays the State Theater, and it's a wonderfully musical town.
Oh, it's great. I miss it. Yeah, we had after college, I dinked around in Baltimore for a little while, but then I got a call from one of my resort musician pals from Lake George. He said, "Gus, I'm in Ithaca. You got to come up here. This place is on fire. There's so much work and so many great musicians." So boom, one suitcase, a couple tennis rackets, and one guitar, and I was off. And that's all you needed in those days.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll be returning to Ithaca this summer and taking over the guest room here.
That was fun.
I want to go back to a point where you came to a fork in the road. You ultimately met and came under the tutorage, so to say, and a life-changing experience it must have been with one of the Senate's most, for me, respected elected officials, Senator Frank Church, who died much too young, the kind of politician I wish we had more of, who headed an incredibly important committee, the House Assassinations Committee. You met him, and do I remember correctly that you worked as a page for the House Assassination Committee?
No, I think, there's some misunderstanding there, miscommunication. Basically, in '68, I was a volunteer for Bobby Kennedy's campaign.
That's it.
Political work. But then I think you're thinking of McGovern. In '72, I actually worked full time in Maryland working for McGovern. And I got to know him and drove him around a few times when he came to Maryland, which was just insanity because I had to speed up old car and I had a presidential candidate and in the back seat. And I'm driving them to a restaurant or something. And here I am dressed. I'm in full hippie regalia. And I was hanging out with the presidential candidate. There's a picture in the book of me after I drove George.
Sure is.
To the airport, and look closely, you'll see I'm wearing these patched Neil Young kind of pants. And I just drove him. It was George McGovern, and I never met Bobby, and it was awful because, obviously it was awful, but that he died and he was murdered in June of '68.
Yes,
and I was out handing out leaflets the day he died, and when we got fired, and he was going to have a big party at his house in McLean, Virginia, in a few weeks for all the volunteers. And I was really looking forward to meeting him because he had a tennis court and I was going to bring my tennis racket and play tennis with the Kennedys. And, this is a selfish personal thing. This is not
that's the way it was.
It's just a weird thing that we were all going to hang out and meet Bobby, who I thought the world of for his stand against the Vietnam War. Yeah. And a month before we got to meet him, that terrible event in Los Angeles.
That had to flash you back to 1963 in some sense.
Well, yeah, people can't imagine today what it was like to go through JFK.
Yep. And a few months before that, in April, Dr. King was murdered. It was a terrible year in that sense.
One after another, yeah. It's hard to even think about these days. But and then the one I got closer to was who I did meet a lot, obviously, was George McGovern. And I spent a lot of time working on the East Coast for him. Do I remember
correctly, at some point you interfaced with Senator Church?
Yeah, but very briefly. I went down when they had the church committee hearings. I would try to come down and attend some of those when they had the open sessions. I communicated with his office. Just as a kid, it was kind of crazy, but I just wanted to be involved. But I couldn't say I knew Frank Church, but I knew his staff, people like that. And then I got to know a lot of the people in the House committee after that.
Now, at that time, because you were an earnest young guy, obviously passionately interested in this, who was it, if I remember correctly, who gave you like a Xerox copy of Lee Harvey Oswald's address book?
That was, I think, a good bit. Well, the Warren Commission actually published his address book, so I got a copy of that, probably at the National Archives. I can't remember any great story about that, but at this point, I at some point I had come up to 40 boxes worth of documents from every available thing. So a lot of stuff came from the National Archives, Oswald's address book, which I gave a copy of to his daughter years later, one of his daughters, Rachel. And that's a wild story too. But I don't want to digress too much. Anyway, so so I was getting more and more involved, and it was really a strange life because I was a working musician. And our band toured around quite a bit. We were up in Ithaca as our base, but we would go around the country. We had a lot of good work.
Yeah.
But me, if we were going to book a gig in Cincinnati, I'd say, "Oh, that FBI guy lives in Cincinnati." So every town we went to, I would try to find somebody to call up who knew who was involved in the Kennedy story. So, but it wasn't for a book or anything. It was just for me. I was desperate to find out what happened. And that's how I first got to travel around thanks to music and started to interview people.
Now, believe it or not, we're coming into the end of our first hour. When we come back, one of the things that, completely separate from all this stuff, I think it was in high school, you were introduced to the sport of tennis, and you went on to become, without exaggeration, a professional level player, and it was an amazing passion of yours. I don't know if you still play, but it wove its way into the fabric of your life in no uncertain terms. How, in 1 minute, did that happen, that you were introduced to the sport?
Well, it was when I was at Mount St. Joe, the parochial high school. When I was a freshman, football was big in Baltimore with the Colts. We all loved it. So I went out for the freshman football team, which was the most painful experience of my life. It was a week of doing calisthenics and jumping jacks and banging into each other. There was no like on TV where you throw the ball 40 yards and we didn't do any of that. We were just beating each other up. And I said, this isn't any fun. So then we were going back to the gym one day, all bloodied up and bruised after about 2 weeks of this. And I saw the tennis players. I said, boy, that looks a lot.
Look, they're wearing white. They're not beat up and dirty, and they said, get to meet girls.
Football thing. I'm going to quit this. I'm going out for tennis. So I went out for the team. Didn't know how to play. I had a great coach who taught me, and luckily we had a really good coach. And he put
hold that thought for a moment, Gus Russo. We are about to go to a 3-minute break. Peter Robbins, Meanwhile Here on Earth, special guest, Mr. Gus Russo, back shortly.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
And we are back. Peter Robbins here, Meanwhile Here on Earth with Gus Russo. Gus, we left off with how you got involved in beginning to play tennis. It's one thing to play a sport, to enjoy it, to play it competitively, but it's another thing to find yourself at some point later on a first name basis with some of the most famous, prolific, legendary practitioners in the sport imaginable. And that is what happened to you. Can you talk a bit about how that happened?
Well, I should preface it by saying the way to understand the craziness that is my life is to remember the concept, a stream of consciousness, or as my friend Jim Gray has referred to it, a puddle of consciousness. In my case, I mean, once you get out there and start being receptive to everything, things just happen. Okay, so I played decent tennis. I played varsity tennis in high school, and I loved it. I was never going to be a big time pro. I didn't start quite young enough. We couldn't afford private lessons, so I was good enough. And so keep in mind, this is the years where I was spending the summers up in Lake George as a teenager playing music. And in the 60s, tennis wasn't a big deal yet. In the 70s is when it really exploded. So up at this one resort where I worked, I guess I was 18 at the time this happened, everybody would be down on the lake, Lake George. They'd be skiing or swimming, and I'd be on the tennis court. I'd have it all to myself or one of my buddies from one of the other staff. And when that was our tennis court, the hotels, nobody else used it. They were all enjoying the lake, which I did too, to a degree, but I was, had to play tennis every day. So one day I go out to play after I got done the work that I was doing for the resort. I went out to play, and there were other people on the court. And I'm thinking, who's on my tennis court? What are guests doing on my tennis
Of all the nerve.
Don't you know there's a lake down there? You should be skiing. And so I went over and I introduced myself. And it was this wonderful family from Queens, New York, who were obsessed with tennis. And the three of them were hitting. And I said, would you like a fourth? Just to play double. Just
Sure.
And they said, sure. They were very nice. Anyway, the father was there with his two kids, a brother and sister, and me. We were playing, and they were just wonderful. And the father's name was Vitas Gerulaitis Sr., and it was his probably 13-year-old boy, Vitas Jr., and his sister, Ruta.
Gotcha.
Well, I didn't, big deal. But but his father, Vitas Sr., was a former Davis Cupper from Lithuania. He was teaching his kids. Just a total fluke that they blew water matter. It turns out this resort was owned by a Lithuanian woman, so a lot of Lithuanian immigrants from New York City stay at her resort. My luck, And so I'm hitting there with Vitas and his sister and his father, and we did it for 2 weeks. We became great pals. The thing was, Vitas wanted to be a guitar player. And I was playing every night in the rock band at the resort, and he would sit there with his buddies, Gaga, and I wanted to be a better tennis player. So I was showing him guitar things, and he and his father was showing me stuff. And so at the end, when they were getting ready to leave, it was so sad. And Mr. G, his father, Mr. Gerulaitis, said, "Hey Gus, at the end of the summer, why don't you come down and stay with us? Because we're members of Forest Hills, the U.S. Open."
Of course.
Board there, and you can come with us to the matches. Okay. I can't believe I did this kind of stuff. Okay, so I called my mother up. I said, Mom, you know how I'm supposed to start my first year of college in September?
Oh, no.
I won't be showing up for a couple of weeks because I'm going to the U.S. Open with my new friends. I missed orientation, the first 2 weeks of classes, because I was hanging out with Vitas and his father and people like Ilya Nastasi and John Newcomb and Rod Laver and Ken Rosewall. I knew all these people. So I was meeting them all through them. It's just this, like I say, stream of conscious craziness. And in those days, in the 60s, tennis was a smaller sport. It was played at Forest Hills, the U.S. Open.
Yes.
And it was more of a club. Everybody knew everybody. You could go over and talk to Rod Laver and have drinks with him. And so it was a much easier thing. It was only a few thousand people there, but at the clubhouse where Vitas was, his father, I had access to everything.
Gosh.
So I would just sit down with Ken Rosewall and say, how did you hit that backhand in that last match? So I can't believe it. So anyway, I show up, after that, I go to school, and all the teachers are looking at me like, who are you? It was this new student. But I didn't care. That became a tradition every fall after working at the resorts. I'd spend 2 weeks sleeping in Vitas's basement in Queens, New York, at Howard Beach.
Yeah.
And we'd take the train to Forest Hills. We'd grab a bag lunch in the town and take it into the matches, sit there and watch the matches. And I never had to pay because they were members and they got me in. So I was staying for free. But then, Vitas became famous.
Very famous.
He at one point, for a minute, he was number 3 in the world. But the thing about him was that every tennis player loved Vitas. He was a rock star. So by knowing him, he was the best guy to know on the whole tour because his best buddy was Bjorn Borg. And so I got to know Borg and Jimmy Connors and McEnroe. They all worshiped Vitas, my buddy.
Oh my gosh.
So I would walk a couple feet behind him, and pretty soon I got to know them all. And it was just a fluke that they showed up at Blue Water Manor when he was 13 playing tennis, and we became buddies. And every time I'd see him, I'd be giving him guitar lessons, and his father would help me with my game. It was so symbiotic and wonderful, and we were dear friends until the day he died.
Right, of course, a terrible day.
And he was, I have to say, Vitas was probably the kindest, most giving human
generous
I've ever met. If he was your friend, he would have cut off his arm for you. Everybody loved him. When he died, Jimmy Connors, Bjorn Borg, McEnroe, Guillermo Vilas, they were all crying. And you never see McEnroe cry
no.
at his funeral. They were his pallbearers at his funeral. And he tennis tournaments had to stop around the world because these guys just left and went to Vitas's funeral.
And it was definitely tragic because of carbon monoxide from backed up heaters, I remember.
He flew back from California where he was playing with Jimmy Connors in a tournament. He said, Jimmy, I have to leave because I promised a friend I would play at a charity event on Sunday. He flew all the way back for a charity event on Long Island, and he was staying, and he took the overnight flight, and he was tired, so he wanted to crash for his charity event in the afternoon. So he took a nap in this guy's pool house, this millionaire who was putting on the charity event, and they had a leak, and he just went to sleep and never woke up.
God. And he was in his 20s, right?
No, he was in his early 40s by then. He had already had a big run in the 70s and 80s as tennis player. By now he was turning into a commentator. Yeah. And he was the first color commentator tennis player, and he was the best. He's the one who showed McEnroe how to do it and everybody else. He was the first. And he was hysterical. He had found it's just like when Lennon died, how his second life had just begun. He had a new number 1 album. He was performing again, and he was in love, and everything was going great. And boom. Well, the same thing happened with Vitas. His life, he had a tough time with drugs in the 80s as a New York City playboy. Sure. And, and he had come out of it. Jimmy and Bjorn, they all did an intervention with him at one point. It was really pretty amazing. But he was a great guy. And he had just created a new life for himself. And then boom.
Gus, let's shift gears again. When you and I met, probably 30 years ago to the year, you were working on the book that became Live by the Sword. As I recall, did that
in the early 90s? We met probably in the early 90s, mid 90s.
I think 92 was when
92. Yeah, I was. Well, at the time I was working on documentaries, like for Frontline. I was doing a big show. Okay. And I didn't really think about doing a book, but I had all this material left over. I didn't ever aspire to be a writer. I wanted to be an investigative reporter or a documentarian if I couldn't be a musician.
Yeah.
So I changed careers in the late 80s because DJs took over all the clubs and there was no work. So, I just said, well, I'll do something else interesting. I'll try to do documentaries. And I wrote a proposal to Frontline and they bought it.
Yeah.
So, okay, boom. And the book thing sort of happened. Yeah. Like everything else, actually, now that I think about it.
It really, I sometimes feel like Woody Allen created Zelig because he heard of you.
It's not a bad comparison. I put on the back of Boomer Days.
It's true.
Comparison. And I don't know if we have all those photos. I don't know if you're going to show any of those, or you can put
Yes,
them up.
in fact, I thought we would start on them now. And before we do, one question. No reason you should remember it, but I remember it because, you opened up a new world for me as a kid who never really got over the Kennedy assassination, never bought the, what we were being told. But you were meeting with people at about that time. And I remember you went out one night and the next morning asking you about who you had met with. It was somebody in regard to the Kennedy assassination, and you weren't interested in talking about it, and I let it go. In all of your work, again, your work just on the mob and organized crime has brought you into contact with some rather scary individuals. Has there ever been a time in your work researching the Kennedy assassination, the mob, or organized crime where you have felt concern for your safety?
Short answer. No.
Hold it one moment. We once again have that distortion. And Chanel, I'm going to guess we're good to go again. Give it a go, Gus.
Okay.
We're on. Yep, keep going.
I can think, literally, I've interviewed thousands of people for all these projects, 14 documentaries and 10 books. And I can only think of 2 times that a little bit of fear cropped in. One is a little bit of a story. It takes 3 or 4 minutes to tell. The other is just an intuition when I did a spy book in 2018 about 2019 about the KGB guys who helped.
Best of Enemies.
Best of Enemies. The KGB guys who helped bring down Robert Hansen and Aldrich Ames, the moles.
Oof.
And, it's at that time.
Would you share that intuition and that brief story with us now?
Sure. The brief story goes back to when I was investigating the Chicago mob. And I wanted to talk to some of the real gangsters. So, knowing me, I just pick up the phone and call the Giancana family, Sam Giancana. His family. He had been deceased, but I wanted to talk to his kids, who were adults at that point. And they agreed to talk to me, but they wanted to get to know me, obviously, first. So they said, let's go out to dinner, and we'll talk, and we'll see. And
Italian restaurant, dare I ask?
It was a restaurant in the suburbs. I have the name of it, in my book, I think, but it might have been in River Forest or something. But it was at the time I knew of the place because it was very popular with the Italians in the suburbs, and some very well-known rub-outs that happened in the parking lot.
Nice.
And so I'm thinking, they want to take me there. Okay.
Continue.
It'll come to the name of it, I think. But regardless, it was a very nice looking place. So I drove out there in my rent-a-car, and there must have been 10 of them there. 3 or 4 of the Giancanas, their spouses, and 2 bodyguards. One of whom was Sam Giancana's old bodyguard.
Oh, God. And
so there's 10 of them. My first thought was,
what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, before I even got out of it, I just get out of the car in the parking lot, and I'm looking at the parking lot where at least 2 or 3 mobsters were rubbed out. And I met Antoinette Giancana's husband first, Bob McDonnell, and we start to go towards the restaurant, and he stops and goes over to a tree just off to the woods and urinates on it. And I go, what the hell? He couldn't wait till I said, Bob, what? He said, well, a guy I didn't like got whacked there. And it's sort of a ritual. Every time I come here, I piss on it. Okay. So then we all go into the restaurant.
Traditions are important to keep.
So we go into the restaurant, and I'm talking, the whole family's there, and I'm thinking about my credit card. I've got 10 people here. We're getting massive amounts of food and wine. Oh, my God, how am I going to pay for it? And so it was going pretty well. But the 2 bodyguards at the opposite ends of the long table didn't say a word. They were just staring bullets at me, just with their arms. I'm thinking, these are the guys I'm thinking about, I'm mostly concerned about. One of whom was named Uncle Louis, who was Sam Giancana's bodyguard. So about an hour or 2 into this thing, it's going well. Uncle Louis walks up behind me and taps me on the back. and says, "Hey, Russo, we got to go out to the parking lot." The parking lot. You asked me when this was the time when I was scared. And I said,
Nice knowing you.
Yeah, I was going over in my head, what did I say to offend them? What did I say? I was trying to be so careful. So we go out in the parking lot, and Louis says, "Hey, Russo, we like you. We're going to help you out." I wipe my brow, and I go, "Uncle Louis, you could have told me that in there. I just lost 5 pounds." So, but that's only part one of the story. Okay, this is a 3-part punchline.
Continue on.
Yeah, so we go in. At the end of the thing, he won't let us go to our cars because now I'm part of the family and he's my bodyguard. And he walks us all individually to our cars to make sure we get in okay. And he says, "Gosh, no, you stay here. I walk everybody to their car. This is my world." So, okay, he walked me to my car, go to my hotel. I'm not there 15 minutes. I get a call. It's Uncle Louis. He says, "Hey, Gus, you're part of the family now. And I just have to ask you, is anybody bothering you? Anybody you want me to talk to? You need any women? Need any booze?" "No, Lou, everything's great." Well, that would happen twice a day. I'd get calls from him at the hotel. Even if I came back to Chicago 2 months later, there'd be a note from Uncle Louis. Same question.
My God.
"Anybody bothering you? You need anything? Should I talk to anybody for you? You need any women? You need some booze?" "No, Louis, I'm great. I'm great."
And do you need anybody killed, basically?
Yeah. And this shows you the seductive nature of that world. He wasn't asking for a penny. All he wanted to do was make sure I was happy.
Oh.
Well, time goes by. This is the final punchline. I am back in Baltimore, and I got a call. I would get calls periodically from Antoinette Giancana, Sam's daughter, and she asked me how things were going. I was talking. And I said, yeah, things are going good. Just one thing, this publisher of one of my books, man, he's holding out on the on the royalties, and man, I could really use it. And she said, "Oh, that's too bad." And we kept talking. We hung up. 5 minutes later, I get a call. "Hey, Gus, it's Louis. I hear somebody's bothering you. Somebody owes you some money." He's already checked the airline schedule. I can be there at 9:30 tomorrow morning. And again, he's not asking for anything. And I said, "No, Louis, please, I don't need you to come here and bother anybody or intimidate anybody. Please, no." He said, "Gus, how much does he owe you?" I think it was about $10,000. And he said, "Gus, you'll have it. I'll be there at 9:30. You'll have your money by 10." And I was broke, but I said, no. I talked him out of it. But there's more to it in terms of what he was going to do with the guy, which I asked him about. And so that was the time I was scared was Uncle Louis, that I had gotten too close. And yeah.
And you said there was another matter of an intuition.
Well, just an intuition. I was working with a lot of ex-KGB guys who had come to the States, and they were working with me on my book.
Best of Enemies, a remarkable book. Another one I just can't recommend enough.
Oh, thank you, Peter. But at that point, Putin was poisoning people, ex-KGB guys. It was in the front page of the newspapers. A man named Skripal, former KGB guy in London, different people in Russia. And he was just on a warpath to poison people. And I was told a big secret about a spy close to Putin, and I couldn't even put it in the book. I was asked by the FBI not to use it. But I was thinking, my God, if Putin thinks I know this. So that I was a little scared that I was going to get some poison on my doorknob, because that's what they do. It's an invisible powder they put. You just touch it and you're dead. That's how they got these guys.
Yeah.
And, so I was pretty nervous about that book project because, and so here we are.
You think?
I survived.
It is, and I must pay it lip service for a moment before we go to the pictures. It is a story, incredibly well documented, absolutely true, about a very highly placed CIA agent and a KGB agent sent to America, and they were assigned to turn each other. And instead, they became really good friends. And what ensues is, I love great espionage fiction, whether it's Le Carré, Ludlum, and you name it. It reads like a novel, except that everything really happened. And what a dark, deadly, incredible world. And there you are, documenting it moment by moment, day by day at times.
Thank
You
you.
really are an extraordinary investigator, and I'm so glad you became a writer.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that's a weird thing too, because at the end of a couple of the documentaries I did in the '90s, I was talking to somebody about all the excess material I had that never got put in the shows, stuff that I thought was really great. And his friend said, "We should write a book." I said, "I'm not a writer. I never aspired to be a writer." And he said, "But you're great. You have a huge library. People who read can figure out how to write." And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Oh, you'll figure it out." So, okay, I'll become a writer.
It's you sent a wonderfully eclectic group of pictures, and I'd like to go through them right now.
Okay, that would be about the third or fourth one. You want to put them in any order in particular, or let's see.
They're actually, I'm putting them in the order that they were numbered in, but they jump around, you know.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
so
this was my band.
Yeah.
This is my band Durango, and when I moved to Ithaca after college, we had this trio doing mostly acoustic music. That horse, by the way, is nibbling on my ear, and I'm trying to keep a straight face. And Beamer, the guy holding the horse up to my ear, he was loving every second of it.
Dude. Last time I saw you, you did not resemble Van Gogh, so the horse was unsuccessful. This is how interesting. This magazine is dated October 18th, my sister Anne's birthday, but 1975.
Yeah, we had a great run. I mean, we made the front page of the Sunday magazine section, and we had a really we did real well with the Ithaca years. The band was really quite good, I have to say, and it was so that was Durango, yeah.
And Jumping Worlds here.
Here I am. See the arrow pointing to that guy in the blue shirt?
Yep.
Yeah, that's yours truly. There I am sitting in Bjorn Borg's player box. Everybody in that box is Bjorn Borg coach, his girl, his wife, his buddies, and me, Zelig. The way that happened was when Vitas introduced me to Bjorn. You know, they all gave me passes to sit in the players box, and I didn't know about this picture. What happened was somebody gets in touch with me and says, "Hey, Gus, I was in England and I saw your picture in a book about Bjorn Borg." And I said, "Oh, really?" They were taking pictures one of the days that I was there. I was there almost every day in that box. That was my perk for watching the U.S. Open for 2 weeks out of every year. And everybody there was somebody except me. I was just me.
Well,
so out of place. But yeah, two people to my right. That's Bjorn's coach, Leonard Berglund, and he was a great guy. And we talked a lot. And it helped my game because I could pick all their brains, you know. And I would say,
amazing.
"What did you tell Borg about this?" Or, you know, it was just so great. But there's Zelig at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, it's true. There are no pictures of you with Hitler or Lindbergh or Roosevelt in this selection. I think you held them back. As a composer, you know, sometimes people offer you opportunities that you normally wouldn't gravitate toward. For example,
People know.
Hold it again. Our sound is slipping again. Hold it one moment. Chanel, do your magic there. And take it away, Gus.
Okay. Again, we're into the world of how things just happen. I didn't look for this. We were playing a gig in Lake George, me and Durango, and we got to be friendly with a group of crazy people who would come to our gigs, one of whom eventually moved to New York and wanted to produce crazy horror movies. And he called me up. He said, "Gus, we need some music for this crazy movie we're doing with no budget." It was a zero budget movie. And boy, was it ever. Oh, my God. I said, "Sure, I'll do it." You know, I love movie scores, and I've always wanted to try to do one.
Yeah.
So, I ended up doing the score for this movie Basket Case that became a cult classic. It's out in Blu-ray, many editions. I remember years later when a Japanese film crew was in the States and they came to film me here in my little house about the Kennedy story. And they were when they came, there's like 6 or 7 of them came to my front porch, and they were very, very polite, but mild-mannered and quiet. Well, they walked into my living room and they saw this poster, and they said, "You do basket case?" They knew basket case in Japan. Now all of a sudden they loved me, and they're bowing to me. And it's like, "Can we get a picture with you?" So we went on the front lawn, took a group picture, and they didn't think anything of me until they saw the basket case poster.
You remind me, at a certain point in my sister Helen's career, she was offered a film role, and also it went on to become a cult classic, not a no-budget, but a very low-budget film called The Toxic Avenger, which Helen co-starred in.
That's right, I forgot. Yeah,
and with footage that was left on the floor without letting her know, she was in The Toxic Avenger 2. And both hysterical, very little in the way of financial remuneration. What I remember is the Kaufman brothers, whose production company was on 8th Avenue in the 50s, in like a third floor walk up. There was a scene where there's an explosion and a baby is blown into a tree. And the scene called for a baby in a tree that was crying, and it had to be a real baby. For some reason, they couldn't get a baby. So one of the Kaufman brothers happened to have a baby, and that baby went up in the tree. And film business is the way it goes there.
Let me tell you a funny story about basket case. I think it's in the book. It became a kind of a cult sensation. It played at the Waverly, where the Rocky. We followed the Rocky Horror movie into the Waverly in Greenwich Village. We played there for longer than the Rocky thing. It was a midnight showing, and people started dressing up like the characters in the movie and talking back to the screen like they did with the Rocky Horror movie. And one day, I get a call from the producer. He's like, "Gus, you got to come down here and see what they're doing. It's crazy. They're yelling back at the screen. They're dressing up like doctors and nurses. It's out of." I took a bus down from Lake George, and I went to see it again at the Waverly. And lo and behold, there were people holding wicker baskets, which held the monster, and they were in these robes. Anyway, so what they were doing was, the first thing they did, the first audience response was when, at the beginning, a guy comes out of a house at night, a dark haunted house. He's looking in the bushes for some noise that he heard, and it's My Spooky Music is playing. And the credits are rolling as this is happening. This is a basket case written by, and this guy, this actor character, hears a noise, and he says, "Who's that?" Just as he says that, just happens to be the time when it says music by Gus Russo. So the whole audience goes, "It's Gus Russo." And I stand up and I say, "It's me." So they did that every
mortality is insured.
So, and the other there's so many weird things. One thing, boy, so much is coming to my mind here. We made no money on it, but then it started coming out in DVD and multiple things.
Oh, no.
And I had moved around a lot, and I'd made my way back to Baltimore, never made any money really on the movie. And I get a call in the early 90s from ASCAP, the clearinghouse for music rights. I thought I was in big trouble because I've been playing all these songs in clubs for years.
Oh, sure. Right, of course. Covers, yeah.
And I said, "Oh, my God, they got me somehow." And so I said, "No, you got the wrong guy," and I hung up. So a few months later, I get another call, and they said, "Is this Gus Russo?" And I said, "Oh, God." And I said, "Yeah, it is. What did I do?" They said, "We've been trying to find you for a long time." I said, I'm thinking, "Oh, man, I'm going to jail. My mother's prediction is coming true." And what it was, they said, "You have royalties piled up for the last 15 years."
Oh, my gosh.
Movie, and we've been trying to pay you. And so they sent me a check for $20,000. That's how I got my first real solo house to rent, was because I answered the phone finally, and all these royalties. They said, "We've been trying to find you." So there you go.
As you're speaking, parts of the book are coming out back to me. And of course, once you've done Basket Case, I mean, there's nowhere to go but on to your next feature film.
They interviewed me for the local paper.
It gets better and better.
Yeah, they interviewed me for the local paper after I'd done a bunch of this kind of stuff. And the article was about how we did it, blah, blah, blah. But the title of the article, the headline was, The headline says, "Local guy does this." But the first bold sentence in the article was, "When you think of brain damage, think of Gus Russo."
Does it get any better?
Well, again, my mother, she's just shaking her head, all that college education for this.
Where did my boy go wrong?
Her big expression in the family, we should shake her head and say, what a waste.
But I'll tell you what, you stand behind the scores of one of the most remarkable double features imaginable.
Yeah, and Brain Damage did well too. Oh my goodness, there were sequels. There was Basket Case 2, Basket Case 3, Return to Brain Damage. It was just these little movies that
Yeah.
I was working on a Basket Case. I spent a lot of time in the city, and as you know, St. Mark's Place area where we lived was just a hotbed of great musical talent. Joe Jackson across the street. The Rolling Stones filmed one of their videos right in front of the apartment at the Howard Place Bar and Grill, waiting on a friend. We watched them do it. We got to know Deborah Harry. She lived down the street. I got one of the gophers on the Basket Case movie happened to be a pot guy, and he delivered pot. He was delivered pot around the city. One day he said,
"Of course,
I got to go up to the Dakota. You want to come with me? I got to take some pot up to Lennon." So I met John Lennon through Basket Case. and I actually met him once before, but this was a little different. In New York City in those days, you saw everybody. It was so exciting.
It's true.
But yeah, we went up there, and Yoko came to the door, and I didn't really go, but I saw John in there and at that time, and she came to the door and she gave him his money and he gave her the bag. Hey, John, how you doing? Wild times, man.
Yes, indeed. Here we have you and a guy. What's his name again? Oh,
Bob. That's my buddy Bob De Niro holding his favorite album, the score from Basket Case.
Nobody would believe this. I mean, it really is. Your life is, and it continues to roll on. But
he said to me, Gus, I'm not much for music. I'm gonna give this to Marty. He loves this shit. Marty Scorsese.
Okay, my turn to come in for 90 seconds here. School of Visual Arts in the late 60s, wide open, maybe 500 students, no student numbers. When Columbia was taken over by the students, the director of visual arts asked us if we want to take over the school. We were too busy getting stoned and having sex with each other to be bothered with that. And one of the things I loved about it the most was you could sit in on most classes, even if you weren't registered. And there was a drawing instructor that I liked a lot. He treated you, even if you weren't his student, as if you were. The only difference was he didn't know your name, but he'd sit there and he'd also make a point. If he's going to do something on your drawing, he would ask you first, as opposed to just draw on your drawing, which many of us felt, is stepping over the line. However, in order to take the class, every class, it was, only about 5% of you are ever going to end up being artists. And I'll tell you one thing, though, my son, who's studying acting at NYU, he is going to be world famous someday. And going on and on about it to the point where it's like, yeah, right, Mr. De Niro. Well, it was Bob's father. And about 2 or 3 years later, I'm out of school. My father's on Long Island. My mom is on a business trip for Nikon. I go out for a guy's weekend. We go out to the steakhouse, have a drink. We walk over to the theater, local fantasy theater. There's a movie we've never heard of, directed by a director we've never heard of, with actors we've never heard of. Sounds okay to us. We go in, and we've got this guy moving around the room and thinking thoughts, and finally his head hits the pillow, and the soundtrack comes up. And the Ronettes' Be My Baby starts, and it's the beginning of Mean Streets.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched it absolutely mesmerized. And at the end of the film, as the credits rolled, I go, oh, my God, you were right, Mr. De Niro. So I thought if I ever meet him, at least I have a conversation starter.
Oh, for sure. And he's the nicest guy. Oh, my goodness. I mean, he's come down to Baltimore and to D.C. just to come down for my book parties.
Oh, my gosh.
And
I love hearing stories like that.
I haven't any contact for 4 or 5 months, but usually there goes spurts where we'll email each other every couple of days. But he's just a great guy. Yeah. I mean, the way I got the Best of Enemies book thing was the CIA guy calls me and said, "Hi, is this Gus Russo?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is Jack Platt," and I knew who Jack Platt was from his reputation in the CIA. And he says, "Bob De Niro says you're the guy to write my book." And he would do that. He would recommend you. He would try to help you out, and
that's beautiful.
Just a nice guy. If you ever get the chance, hang with him. He's a good guy.
I'll do that.
This was sent to me by the gentleman in the white suit. Of course, is the famous Jim Lavelle, the detective who was handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald, and he sent this to me. And he's autographed it on his leg. What some company did was they
hold it, Gus. We need a audio correction here, Chanel. And continue on, Gus.
Jim sent this.
Nope, we still got it. Try again.
Yeah, working now?
Fine.
Oh, very interesting. And this is this company come up with these protective backings you can put on your electric guitars. So they photoshopped this picture with Lee Harvey Oswald on the microphone and Jim holding guitars. And Jim's, what did it say on there? To my good friend Gus. Anyway, Jim was one of the thousands of people that I got to interview and talk to, and I thought this was kind of goofy. You'd like to see that.
Talk about being immortalized in a photograph. Gosh.
Really? Yeah. One of the CIA guys I interviewed was with Fidel Castro in the 50s before he took over, before he won the revolution. And the CIA was actually working with him and this was him in the hills getting his teeth drilled with a Singer sewing machine. The CIA guy gave me this picture he took of him. I thought it was kind of strange.
Well, this is not a picture everybody has in their photo album.
That's on my wall right next to me.
Of course. Okay.
There I am with Oliver Stone years after the movie was made, but also in the picture off to the far left is Maggie. And then next to her is Paul Haggis, the Academy Award winning screenwriter. Jesus. So basically it's me and 3 Academy Award winners.
As happens in Gus Russo's life.
Who doesn't belong in this picture is what my life is.
Jesus, even that part of Maggie looking over at Stone is a keeper. Obviously, the movie JFK was highly controversial. It was kind of a conspiracist dream come true. It was a great film, but not historically accurate. You were an advisor to Stone, not on the plot, as I recall, but on the authentic details of Dallas in November of '63 about, that this street, had this kind of surfacing on it. Do I remember that correctly, Gus?
Yeah. By the way, I have read the instructions here to lower my microphone, but it's not easy to do without going into the preferences. It takes.
Okay, we're doing fine.
Just talk quieter. When I first moved back to Baltimore, I was trying to get all this different work. I wrote the proposal for Frontline. I wrote a fictional story about the Kennedy assassination, a screenplay. And I figured, who could I send this to?
Oh, gee.
And who in Hollywood is doing political movies? Well, there was only one person.
Yes.
So I mailed it. I got his address and mailed it to Oliver Stone.
Jesus.
And, and so not only did Frontline call me up, but Oliver Stone called me up. And I figured,
not one of his people. He called you.
Well, his people called and put him on the phone.
Okay.
And so he liked the script, but mine was fiction. And I thought my ship had come in when they called, but no. He said, but you seem to know everybody. He said, I could use you as an advisor. And I didn't realize he had written the script already. And I said, yes. Of course. So, I got to know him. He flew me to LA and to Dallas and to New Orleans. And he always presented the thing to me as he's going to have an ending where there's going to be 7 different endings. And I like that famous Japanese movie. I forget the name right now. But and the viewer would be able to pick which ending he thought was the best, and out of these different things. I said, well, that's reasonable. And then I looked at the script finally, and it was all about Jim Garrison, which was, not what I was interested in.
Yeah.
But I stuck around long enough to watch him shoot a lot of scenes and got to know him and got to be great friends with a lot of the crew. And after I wrote my book, which said that Oswald did it, Oliver's not very happy with me ever since. So it goes.
And let's touch on that. Well, actually, no, let's move on. This next photograph is one of my favorites. Jesus.
Yeah, there I am producing a segment with the great Tom Brokaw and Dan Rather. I can't believe that, I co-produced that show, Where Were You, in 2013, and just got to meet so many people that I didn't work with. Dan Rather I had worked with before.
Yeah.
But that was a thrill to get those two guys together and to get a picture with them.
And some of these pictures, if it's anybody but you, it's like, please, this is Photoshop. Don't yank my leg. But it's not. This is your life.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy when you look back at it. Jeez.
Yeah, and wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then my favorite singer of all time, right? Somebody said, Gus, did you see the latest AARP magazine? I said, no, I'm not going to do it. Tony Bennett said, my book would be the best book for Marty Scorsese, and Tony was my hero. So that's also framed on my wall. Just crazy.
That, once again, this is a dream. If this was the one shot, of you're being a public person, it's just one more day in the life of Gus Russo.
I didn't waste a lot of time now that I think about it,
That's wonderful. Oh, now let's talk about this. This is truly, can you imagine? Oh my God.
Yeah, I've had people say to me, boy, if the Kennedy assassination happened today, we'd have so many different pictures of it. We'd know exactly what happened. And I said, no, just the opposite. Nobody would see it.
Yeah, people would be looking at their phones when it happened.
So I had a friend of mine, we mocked this thing up as a joke. And if you look beyond the car, very little on the sidewalk, on the far sidewalk, there's a dog sitting there. That was my dog, Jem. He's the only person watching the actual assassination.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah,
and this, to bring us back to reality here, that Lincoln that became such a dark symbol in American history.
Now, there's the real one, which people, think that the bullet couldn't have gone down through the guy in front of Kennedy, Governor Connolly. But there's the real picture. The seat was practically on the floor, the one that Connolly was sitting on. So the bullet didn't have to go down and then back up and down again. It just went straight, right on down through both of them. But the Oliver Stone wouldn't show you that angle in that picture in his movie. He portrayed it completely differently. He had the seats at the same level.
Yeah.
And so he could have a big magic bullet.
Yeah.
But that's the real limousine. In fact, that picture was taken the night they got it back to Washington.
Gosh.
So, here I am at the book party. Bob came down to D.C. for our book party for Best of Bennies, Bob De Niro. And there's Gennady, the ex-KGB guy who we wrote about, and my co-author, Eric. And it was just a great night. But, I just couldn't believe. I invited him down. I just couldn't believe he did it.
It's amazing. I mean, for most people, they look at this picture, and obviously Robert De Niro is the most famous person. I look at this picture of Denali, and I think about what this man was put through. And once again, the transcendence of friendship. You can be on complete opposite sides of the aisle, of political beliefs, of life and death. And when you care about somebody and they care about you, it transcends everything.
For sure. Yeah, I learned a lot by talking to those two guys. I'll tell you, they loved each other.
Yeah. Gus, at this point right now, you have written a fictional book. You have written a novel. Can you tell us a bit about it?
I was always curious if I could do fiction, and I always wondered what the difficulty level was compared to the hard work we do in nonfiction interviewing people. And I've always had this idea about of a story about a hacker who was actually a Robin Hood hacker who didn't do it to be malevolent or to hurt anybody, but to help people. And so I came up with this thing, and I fleshed for what it's worth. I wrote it and self-published it, and I like it a lot. People have really enjoyed it. I don't want to give too much away, but it bears on a lot of historical facts that it's based on. Parts of it are based on, and and there's I hope I have a surprise ending. There's a lot of thriller aspects to it, people have said that it really works. The surprises worked, the twists that come about in the show. So it was a lot of fun to do, and I hope I'll do another fiction at some point. But it was just to see if I could do it. It's a whole other mentality.
You have written and had 10 books published?
Yeah, 9 under my name, and I ghost wrote something for somebody, which is, I guess, confidential.
Oh, okay.
But 10 total, and 14 network special documentaries I was involved with, but all I wanted to do was be a musician.
And maybe every once in a while play some tennis.
Play some tennis.
As we come into our last 8 minutes or so, let's take a look at your books and just spend a minute or so to tell us a bit about each one. I have not read all your books, but it's kind of a quirky thing to have friends who are writers and artists and musicians, and that awkward thing of, oh God, this is a pretty mediocre song, or I didn't like that movie, or the documentary kind of sucked, and the wonderful feeling of really being a fan of a friend's work.
Thank you.
I look forward to reading the books of yours I haven't. This was the first one I read, and it kind of knocked me for a loop because I very much felt, the grand conspiracy idea of whether or not Oswald was directly involved or whether or not he was a patsy, that there were X number of other players. And in this book, you take that to task.
This was the book that, with all the leftover material I had from Frontline and from a couple other shows. And this was to show that Oswald indeed pulled the trigger. But the big secret had more to do with keeping the Castro stuff out of the public, square in terms of what the Kennedys were doing trying to kill Castro and so forth. And that Oswald may have met with them in Mexico City 2 months before he killed Kennedy. So this sort of set the stage for what I wrote later, saying that there were indeed mysteries about this, but Oswald did do the shooting.
Have you ever had anybody in the JFK research community or, just an American who, quote unquote, knows in their mind that, Oswald was not involved, come at you or get angry at you or express rage or frustration or even suggest that, you're misrepresenting this intentionally?
Well, I've had friends who've written books that said Oswald did it, and they've gotten death threats. I haven't gotten that bad, but I have had people accuse me of being a paid CIA operative, all this stuff. If you think Oswald did it, then you must work for the CIA, I guess is the formula. And there were many times where I said, I wish I did work for the CIA. I could use the pension. But, I don't, and I didn't. So there you go.
Can you tell us a little bit about your contacts with, your friendship with Lee Harvey Oswald's wife, Marina, and his daughter?
Well, I was in Austin, Texas in the early 90s doing some of this research, and I knew that Rachel Oswald lived there and worked there, his youngest daughter. And, I just wanted to meet her and see what her life was like. Sure. Not that she knew anything, because she was only a couple months old when all this happened.
Yeah.
And so she was a waitress at a restaurant right in the heart of Austin, and Texas Chili Parlor. And I went in, introduced myself, and I waited around till she got done. And we sat and talked for a long time, and I saw her again one or two more times after that. But the weirdest thing about that was she said, I want to warn you, Gus, I'm moody, just like my father. I said,
Oh no.
not that moody.
That's unnerving. Yeah. Like Uncle Louie.
But she said, I don't own one thing of my father's because the government owns everything. His wristwatch, his shoes, his shirts. I have nothing. They took all the photos. And I said, well, I'll be happy to Xerox some stuff, photocopy some stuff next time I'm at the archives.
Yeah.
So I photocopied his phone book, his address book. And next time I was in Austin, I gave it to her. Well, she looks at the cover of it and she starts welling up with tears. And I said, what's the matter? She said, look, and I had never noticed this before. It was a photocopy of a leather-bound address book, or pseudo leather. And lightly, I would never seen this in 1,000 years, lightly carved into the leather was the name Rachel. He said, he was thinking about what to name me. This was, he was thinking about me. And that it was just crazy. But I met Rachel. She seemed very nice. I didn't get to know her much after that, but we met in Austin, and that was it.
How poignant. How poignant.
There's always a poignant part to all this if you get to talk to people. There's always a moment, Yeah. And this was the follow-up. That was the follow-up to the movie we did in Germany about the Oswald in Mexico and all the sort of answers to the questions I asked in the first book. I had a lot more resolution to what really happened with Oswald and these Cubans. So I had to write this book with my friend Steve Moulton. This was the book that Uncle Louie helped me write.
Yipes. Yeah, and look at the wonderful photos at the bottom.
Yeah. Yep, those are the guys. And that book did really well for me, actually. And it's been optioned in Hollywood 6 or 7 times, but it's under option right now. Hopefully they'll do it this time.
Hey, keep optioning it, and keep paying the option fee. I don't think most people realize the impact that organized crime has had since Prohibition on life in America. It just doesn't seem possible, but it's true.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of popular culture, this one kind of blew my mind because Goodfellas has become such an iconic film, and Ray Liotta's playing of Henry Hill, who basically you did this book with as the follow-up to Wise Guy, which is the original name of the book, written with Nicholas Pileggi, the great investigative writer. This must have been quite a project.
Yeah, but I think we're when I'm reading here, we're almost out of time. It was a great working with Henry was insane. Sometime I'll tell you the details.
Believe it or not, we have just run out of time. Gus Russo, it has been an amazing 2 hours. Would you come back again at some point and pick up where we left off?
Sure, Peter. Anytime. This has been fun. Yeah.
I'm delighted.
Thank you for thinking of me, and
please. Read Gus's books, watch Brain Damage, play tennis. This is Peter Robbins, my special guest, Gus Russo. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, be kind to each other, and we'll see you next week.